Please adhere to YouTube's selected guidelines before viewing the content of this video. I do not encourage or condone any products, actions, or behaviors shown in this video. All videos are produced in a safe, professional, and controlled environment. Please do not attempt to replicate any actions performed during the video. All actions are performed by professionals.
Alrighty, so today I'm going to be smoking and reviewing the American Spirit Gold cigarettes, which are a more niche American Spirit than not. This is a light cigarette that contains only organic, USA grown tobacco, which is pretty niche and unique if you ask me. From what I can tell, this cigarette is meant to be a sister cigarette to the American Spirit Yellows, which are the more common light American Spirit variety, but these cigarettes are meant to be an alternative for people who want a cigarette made with organic tobacco and USA grown tobacco as a whole. And so as such, these cigarettes are marketed at a much more niche demographic, and so as such, I'm kind of thinking that there's a possibility that these cigarettes might be a little bit more interesting of a smoke than not, even though they are a light cigarette, and even though light cigarettes are generally not to my personal preference. I don't want to get my hopes too high for this cigarette, but I am hoping for a more interesting smoking experience than not. Let me just put it that way. That is for sure. But what is American Spirit as a brand? Well, American Spirit is a brand of additive-free natural cigarettes that was first started in 1982 by the Santa Fe Natural Tobacco Company. And the Santa Fe Natural Tobacco Company was started only to start American Spirit as a brand. Now, for the first 10 to 15 years of American Spirit's existence as a brand, it was much more of a niche brand than not. However, in the mid to late 1990s, the popularity of American Spirit as a brand started to rise. So much so that some tobacco companies started taking interest in American Spirit. And so much so that in 2002, Reynolds, the producer of Camels, actually decided to purchase American Spirit as a brand along with its parent company, the Santa Fe Natural Tobacco Company, for $340 million. And since Reynolds purchased American Spirit as a brand, American Spirit as a brand has absolutely exploded in popularity. And now today, within the United States, American Spirit is bigger, better, and more popular than ever before. Within the United States today, American Spirits are produced in North Carolina by the Santa Fe Natural Tobacco Company, which is a subsidiary of Reynolds, although they don't like to say that very much, I do want to acknowledge. Outside of the United States, though, American Spirits are not produced by Reynolds, and they're not produced by the Santa Fe Natural Tobacco Company. Instead, they are actually produced by Japan Tobacco and Japan Tobacco International, depending on where you are in the world. And that is because in 2015, Japan Tobacco decided to purchase only the international rights to American Spirit as a brand for $5 billion. That's billion with a B. $5 billion. That's more than Microsoft paid for Minecraft. $5 billion for just the international rights to a brand. That's pretty wild if I do say so myself. And I mean, like, talk about a return on investment. Less than 15 years prior to Japan Tobacco's purchase of the international rights of American Spirit as a brand, Reynolds had purchased American Spirit as a brand for $340 million. And I assume that purchase included both the domestic and international rights to the brand. And then less than 15 years later, they sell just the international rights for $5 billion. I mean, like, talk about a return on investment. I mean, like, that's just nuts. Less than 15 years later, I mean, like, even with inflation, that is still an insanely good return on investment. I'm sure the Reynolds executives certainly had no complaints on my behalf, or not on my complaint. I'm getting more jumbled up. I'm sure the Reynolds executives certainly had no complaints on their behalfs about the raise that they got right after the purchase. That is for sure. I'm sure they had no complaints on their behalfs. That is for sure. That's very much what American Spirit is as a brand, though. But what about this specific variety? Well, frankly put, I don't know anything about the history of this specific variety. I don't know when it was first introduced onto the United States market. I don't even know roughly how long it's been around. If I had to guess, it's probably been around for 10, 15, maybe 20 years now, if not even longer than that. I really don't know, frankly put. But one thing I do know is that saying, "I want an American Spirit Gold," to a cashier at a gas station or convenience store near you these days is going to be a little bit more confusing than not for both you and the cashier. And that is because today, American Spirit actually sells two different gold branded cigarettes that are both called the American Spirit Golds. They sell the American Spirit Smooth Golds, which are a new addition to the American Spirit lineup. And then they also sell these, the American Spirit Golds, which were the original golds that American Spirit offered. But either way, both of those cigarettes still have gold in the name, so I definitely do think it's going to confuse both people and cashiers a little bit more so than not. I'm not exactly sure why American Spirit decided to name two cigarettes the almost exact same thing, but nonetheless they did. I do suppose maybe their goal is to just make American Spirit's lineup just a little bit more confusing than it already is. I feel like American Spirit's lineup is already pretty confusing, and all they've done is just made it more confusing now. So maybe their goal is just to make it the most confusing cigarette lineup on the United States market. I'm not sure, in all honesty. Either way, though, it is too funny that American Spirit now offers two cigarettes that are called the American Spirit Golds. It's definitely a little bit more confusing than not, that is for sure. But I think that's pretty much everything I wanted to say for the intro. Hey y'all, Jacob Editing Jones here. I realized about halfway through this video that I had completely forgotten to give a huge shout out to Fred Scott for giving me this pack of cigarettes to make some content about and to make a review on. Thank you so much to Fred Scott for giving me this pack of cigarettes to make a review on and everything like that kind of thing. I cannot believe that it slipped my mind to give you a huge shout out, my man. But nonetheless, thank you so much to Fred Scott for giving me this pack of cigarettes to make a video on. I really, really, really do appreciate it. Hope you guys enjoyed the rest of the video. Thank you so much for watching, y'all. As a whole, I am looking forward to trying these cigarettes a little bit more so than not, as I'm thinking they have a possibility of being a little bit more of an interesting smoke than not. And while I'm not expecting to enjoy these cigarettes to the fullest extent, as these are still a light cigarette, I am hoping for a better experience than not, at the minimum kind of thing, at the minimum. Although, I do genuinely hope that I really enjoy smoking these cigarettes, I will admit. As with every cigarette I try, I really do hope that I end up enjoying them, but one can't say for sure until they actually try the cigarette, of course. I do suppose now it's probably time for me to go ahead and cover my expectations for these, the American Spirit Original Gold cigarettes. So, what are my expectations taste-wise for these cigarettes right here? Well, I'd have to say taste-wise, I am very much expecting a more sour than not tobacco taste with a little bit of a sweet taste as an undertone and a little bit of a tangy taste as well overall. Not like a fruit-like tangy taste, just kind of like a lemon-like tangy taste, but not really a fruity lemon-like kind of tangy taste. I definitely have to say I'm expecting it to just be more so than not a sour and sweet cigarette with an overtone of tang, I do suppose is the right way of putting it. That's very much what I'm expecting taste-wise from these cigarettes right here. Body-wise, I'm definitely expecting a much smaller body than not, and I'm expecting the body to be a little bit more airy than not, as well as I am expecting these cigarettes to have a line of perforation or two on the filter. I'm thinking airflow-wise, the airflow is probably going to be much more constricted than not. These are an American Spirit after all, and American Spirits do tend to have a pretty constricted airflow, as American Spirits contain quite a lot of tobacco, if I do say so myself. And so as such, I'm thinking the airflow is going to be more constricted than not as a whole. And so as such, I'm thinking the draw is probably going to be a little bit heavier than not as well. However, due to the perforation on the filter that I'm expecting, I'm also expecting the draw to be a little bit more airy than not. Roughness, smoothness-wise, I'm thinking these cigarettes are probably going to be right around a 6 out of 10 if I had to guess, with 1 being the smoothest and 10 being the roughest. And these, as a whole, at around about a 6 out of 10, are going to be right under your standard, like, full-flavored cigarette, like, let's say, a Marlboro Red or something like that kind of thing in roughness and smoothness. And I'm thinking strength-wise, these are probably going to be right around a 6 out of 10 as well, even though these are a light cigarette. They are still an American Spirit light cigarette, and American Spirits have a lot of tobacco, and they do tend to be a little bit heavier than not. Even the light cigarette varieties do tend to be a little bit heavier than not from American Spirit, and so as such, I'm definitely expecting these to not really be a light cigarette like, let's say, a Marlboro Gold, which would be more like a 4 out of 10 on the strength scale, and I'm expecting it to be more similar strength-wise to something like, let's say, a Marlboro Medium or a Marlboro Red. And that's very much what I'm expecting strength-wise from these cigarettes right here. And those, as a whole, are my expectations for these cigarettes. And I do suppose, now that I've covered my expectations, I should probably go ahead and start covering the packaging of this pack of cigarettes right here. After I go over the packaging, I'm going to go ahead and get the cellophane all off. I'm going to go ahead and get the pack of cigarettes all opened up. I'm going to go and let you guys know what these cigarettes actually look like, what they feel like, and what the quality of them is like. Then after that, I'm going to go ahead and get one of the American Spirit Organic Gold cigarettes all lit up, and I'm going to go ahead and let you guys know how these cigarettes actually are. Then after that, I'm going to go ahead and give you guys my final thoughts on these cigarettes, and then after that, I'm going to go ahead and give these cigarettes a rating as well. But first off, as said, we got to start with the packaging. But before I go over the packaging, actually, I want a little bit of a sip of water because my throat's a little bit dry today. I ain't gonna lie, y'all. A little bit dry today. I guess that's not really wrong. That's not really the wrong way of putting it, but I didn't need to say today twice, I do suppose. That water was pretty good, if I do say so myself. Glad I gave myself the opportunity to have a little bit of sip of water. I do suppose now, without further ado, we should go ahead and start covering the packaging. And aesthetics-wise as a whole, I'm not a fan. I like American Spirit packaging generally more so than not, but this is a slightly different design than most American Spirit packaging. Now, I do want to acknowledge that this was limited release packaging that no longer is in production. However, nonetheless, I still don't like this packaging. The normal American Spirit Gold packaging with the more classic than not American Spirit look is pretty good if you ask me, kind of thing. But this specific variety of the American Spirit Gold packaging, I don't like. I'm not a fan. Not a fan one bit. I don't like it. It takes everything good about the American Spirit packaging, the classic sort of look with the guy smoking the peace pipe in the corner and everything like that kind of thing, and the classic American Spirit logo just on the very nice colored background, and just ruins all of it. Now we have like a strip right here that completely interrupts the sort of like very sort of like almost, I'd have to say, like gold mustard yellow background kind of thing. This interrupts it. Then we get the tiny logo down here. It's not great aesthetics wise. I mean, like, I don't like it. I'm not a fan. I don't like this packaging aesthetics-wise at all. I'm not a fan, frankly put. Now, I do want to acknowledge, of course, as said, the normal packaging for the American Spirit Golds, I like just as much as any normal American Spirit variety. The brand continuity between American Spirits is pretty good. It's just the normal American Spirit packaging, but with this sort of yellowish background. And that packaging is pretty good, but this specific packaging right here, I'm not a fan of. I'm really not a fan of, frankly put. And aesthetics-wise, I do feel like it's pretty weak. There are one or two details I do like about this packaging, I do want to acknowledge, but as a whole, it's much more weak than not aesthetics-wise. And functionality-wise, it's pretty weak as well. From a distance, is this an American Spirit variety? I'd have to say it is, but it's not as distinct from a distance with this packaging as it is as it is with the normal packaging kind of thing. This is not as good of a look from a distance nor up close as the normal American Spirit packaging that is normally used, in my personal opinion. And either way, even with the normal packaging, this cigarette's a little bit hard to tell what cigarette it actually is from a distance, because the colors between the American Spirit Yellows and the American Spirit Golds are pretty similar. Like, this is still very much more so than not a yellow background kind of thing. And the American Spirit Yellow, while it does have a slightly more light, almost pastel yellow background color to it, from a distance, especially in like poor lighting and stuff like that, I definitely do think these would be harder to tell apart from a distance, which would confuse both you and the cashier. But it's nothing new for American Spirit's lineup. The American Spirit lineup has a pretty good brand continuity, almost too good where you can confuse cigarettes between each other. So functionality-wise, not really the greatest kind of thing. And aesthetics-wise, it's not the greatest either, but that's really the main thing. My main beef with this is really just the fact that this is that whole sort of limited edition packaging from a while back that I'm not a fan of, frankly put. I don't like this packaging, and I think the normal look looks much better. But as said, there are some aspects of this packaging that I do like, and so as such, I do suppose I should probably start covering the details of the packaging so I can actually go ahead and, well, talk about the details of the packaging I actually do like. So without further ado, let's go ahead and start off with the background and all of the details on the background. And we can see the background as a whole is a very nice sort of, I had described it as like sort of a mustard yellow. I'm not really sure if it's like a mustard yellow. It's kind of mustardy, I do suppose, but it's like a very bright mustard, like very, very like bright Heinz mustard, I definitely have to say. It's like sort of a mustard yellow, almost gold background, of course, since these cigarettes are called the American Spirit Gold. You know, very much just a basic sort of almost mustard yellow gold colored background, I definitely have to say, to emphasize that these are indeed the American Spirit Golds. On the yellow background, we can see there is some orange detail on it, and we can see this orange detail right here is a little bit more intricate than not, and this is one of the aspects of the packaging that I do actually really like, because this is a tobacco plant. We can see the tobacco leaves stretching up and over and just like that kind of thing. The design actually stretches around to the bottom and to the side just a little bit as well, kind of thing. Does it stretch over to the top? It does indeed stretch over to the top. I mean, like, the design stretches around. These are the things I like about this packaging. I really like that the design stretches around. This design in specific stretches around the packaging. I really like that. I also really like just the tobacco leaf design on the packaging as a whole. I just don't know why they couldn't have done that design with just the normal American Spirit packaging, like just put the tobacco on the front of it and just have the normal American Spirit design kind of thing. I'm not sure in all honesty, but I mean, like, it's not like this packaging is a terrible look by any means, but I don't know. There's only like two things I like about this packaging. It's just that the design stretches around a little bit more so than not as a whole, and I like the fact that there's a tobacco leaf on it kind of thing. I think it's cool. And as said, the tobacco leaf is much more than not done up in, I'd have to say, sort of a, well, sort of a, not lighter than not orange, but sort of a, what's the right way of putting it? Not like a burnt orange, sort of a, not pastel orange, I don't know. It's just kind of orange. Not really sure how to describe it in all honesty. But, excuse me, it's orange nonetheless. And that's very much all there is to details for the main background, I definitely have to say. Moving on to the foreground details, we can see in black right here, it just says made with organic tobacco right there, just making very clear that these cigarettes are indeed made with, well, organic tobacco. Then under that, we can see in silver the American Spirit Thunderbird design right there. Then under that, we can just see there's a little bit of a sort of label right here. It's got some like little like stamp cutout parts over here kind of thing, and it stretches all the way over to the side, and it does stretch around a little bit, but not to the fullest degree, I definitely have to say. But we can just see on this little bit of a sort of like off-white label, it just says Natural American Spirit right there. The natural text is all in red, and then the American Spirit text right here is all in black with a red insert, which is pretty cool if I do say so myself, or you could say it's in red with a very bold black background. I do suppose you could say that as well. Very much just the classic American Spirit logo, but on a white sort of like stamp or like sticker or something like that kind of thing, and it really just interrupts the entire design. It doesn't really look the greatest in my personal opinion. Kind of taking a chunk out of the little stamp, though, we can see the classic American Spirit design right here with the Native American with his crown of feathers, and he's just sitting like in front of the sun and everything like that kind of thing, smoking the peace pipe with a feather right there. And then under all of this right here, we can just see in black, it just says gold right there, of course, just certifying that this is indeed the American Spirit Gold. Then under that, it just says U.S. grown tobacco, and then there's a line, and it just says mellow taste right there. Mellow taste pretty much is just American Spirit sort of corporate mumbo jumbo for this is a light cigarette. And yeah, that's pretty much all there is to the design on the front of the packaging. As a whole, meh. There's two details I like. I like the design stretches around, and I like the tobacco. That's about it. Other than that, this is some of the worst American Spirit packaging I've seen. I'm not a fan. Frankly, but I don't like it. Have never liked this packaging. I'm not a fan. Do not like it. Yep, not a fan. But that's pretty much all I had to say about the front of the packaging. As a whole, pretty weak in my personal opinion. Very, very, very mid packaging. if not below mid packaging, if I do say so myself. Without further ado though, let's go ahead and move on to the back of the packaging. We can see the back of the packaging is quite different than the front of the packaging. We can still see, of course, that same yellow background with tobacco leaf details going all over the place behind the foreground details and everything like that kind of thing, which is pretty nice if I do say so myself. We can just see it just says Natural American Spirit up here, just a little bit more miniature than on the front of the packaging. And then we can see there is the normal design right here as well, a little bit bigger than on the front of the packaging. I'm thinking that's actually a little bit bigger than on the front of the packaging, which is pretty amusing. Then under that, we can see another sort of white, like off-white label right here with some like stamp sort of like cut out right there and everything like that, trying to look like a sticker. Of course, it's not actually a sticker, it's part of the design of the pack. On that, a little bit of a stamp design right here, we can just see it just says a bunch of stuff in black, which I'm going to go ahead and read off to you guys real quick. It just says sustainably grown, thoughtfully crafted. And then under that, it just says, we work closely with our farmers to produce these cigarettes with simply the finest whole leaf tobacco and water, organically farmed with the earth in mind. And then there's just a black line right there. And then it just says, explore how it's made at americanspirit.com, which is, of course, their website. And then under all of that, there is more black text right here, and it just says, made in our zero waste to landfill facility, all in black. Then under that, there's a silver line and another silver line with the Thunderbird design in the middle. And then under that, it just says SFNTC, comma, Tobaccoville, comma, North Carolina, 27050. And then there's a line, sfntc.com, certified organic by Quality Certification Services. I assume that's probably actually the company name. Quality Certification Services, probably actually the company name, not just, yeah, we use Quality Certification Services. No, that's the actual company, if I had to guess. People be naming their companies like that. It's like, wait a minute, is this a company or are they just like, yeah, we just used like Quality Services. No, that's probably the name of the company in all honesty, which is too funny if I do say so myself. But, you know, the back of the packaging, a little bit different than the front, I definitely have to say. It's very much just informational, just trying to sell you on this cigarette. Just very much just market segmentation spiel and everything like that kind of thing. Just trying to sell you on these cigarettes and whatnot. Really, that's pretty much all that's going on. Taking a look at this side of the packaging, we can just see, once again, that same sort of yellow background with no sort of stretch around details or anything like that on this side, sadly. At the top, we can just see it just says 20 Class A cigarettes right there. Then there's a line, and it just says copyright SFNTC right there. Then under that, we got to hold it like this, and it just says PEFC right there. There's like a zero waste thing or something like that kind of thing. Next to that, it just says call us with questions, 1-800-332-5595. Then under all of that, it just says Natural American Spirit cigarettes are not safer than other cigarettes. And then to the side of that, it just says that these cigarettes are, of course, FSC compliant. And then we get the barcode right there. And then moving on to the other side, we could just see we get some stretch around details, which are pretty nice, like up here and up here. And then we can just see the Surgeon General warning right here, which just says, Surgeon General warning, cigarette smoke contains carbon monoxide. Well, I don't know why that's considered to be a warning. I thought that was like a good thing. Carbon monoxide gives you a little bit of an extra buzz, and I want that little bit of extra buzz. So that's more advertising stuff than anything, in my personal opinion. And that's pretty much all there is to this side of the packaging. Moving on to the top of the packaging, we can see it's very much just a miniature version of the front of the packaging, I definitely have to say. We can see some of the tobacco detail stretching around at the top of the packaging right here. It just says Natural American Spirit right there, very much in the same way it does on the front of the packaging. We see the actual design right there, and then it just says gold right there. And the bottom of the packaging is a little bit more simplistic than the top of the packaging. We lose the actual American Spirit design right there, but we retain the American Spirit logo itself, and we still have some of the tobacco leaf design kind of stretching around and everything like that kind of thing. Although, does it actually like really stretch around? No, it does do a decent job of stretching around, I guess. It kind of stretches around from the bottom, but not really from this side at all kind of thing. But they really can't, because this is a regulatory thing and they can't cover it up or put designs under it or anything like that kind of thing, I assume. We can see that, of course, there is a tax stamp right there, as these cigarettes were indeed purchased in Indiana. We can see there's some cigarette numbers right here as well, and those cigarette numbers read 6G, or sorry, let me restart. They read 6CG2YN3. And if I remember correctly how to read this code, G is the month, and then 2 is like the year? I might be wrong. So G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. So that would be the 8th month of the year. So that would be what? August? August is the 8th month of the year, right? So it'd be August of 2022 is when these were produced, I think, if I am remembering how to decipher the code correctly. I could be wrong. Let me know if I'm wrong in the comments down below. But I Could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure this pack was made in August of 2022. So it is a little bit older than not, but not like super old by any means. Definitely not stale because it is still in the cellophane. I've definitely smoked older cigarettes, that is for sure. You know, as a whole, the packaging, I'm not a fan, frankly, but I don't like it that much. I don't like it. No, thank you. I like the classic American Spirit look. And I'm not a fan of this one-off design. I don't like it. I hope American Spirit never brings this design back, frankly, but I like the classic look. It's so much better. But there are nice details to this packaging. It's pretty mid packaging as a whole, though, in my personal opinion. Yeah. Without further ado, let's go ahead and get the cellophane all off, and let's go ahead and take a look at the quality of the packaging, just real quick kind of thing. So what is the quality of this packaging like? As a whole, the quality seems to be a little bit better than not kind of thing. This pack is a little bit beat. It was jumbled up in a box, I do suppose, or something along those lines. You know, it is a little bit beat, if I do say so myself, but the quality of this pack of cigarettes itself, not bad by any means. And yeah, overall, pretty average quality for a pack of cigarettes, I definitely have to say. And the texture of the packaging as a whole is very much that of just a printed paperboard texture, I definitely have to say. And I'd like to say that, as with 99.9% of cigarettes, of course this pack of cigarettes looks better with the cellophane off, but this is that 0.1% that doesn't look better with the cellophane off, because this is just bad packaging as a whole. It's just so mid as a whole, and I do not think it looks better with the cellophane off. I do not think it does. I do not like this packaging. Not a fan. Not a fan at all. Why mess with something that works? I mess with something that works. It's like Pringles or like Hostess making their Twinkies weird. Like, why would you mess with something that works? Why just stick with what works? If it works, it works. Just keep marketing what works. Why do anything else? I don't know. I'm sure there was a reasoning behind this. As said, this is not a permanent thing. This packaging was not a permanent thing by any means, but I still don't like this packaging. I'm still not a fan, frankly put. But yeah, as a whole, quality of the packaging pretty decent. As said, just very much a printed paperboard texture. I just realized there was something I completely forgot to say at the very beginning of this video. I completely forgot to say I'm going to have to leave a little injection after. I'm going to have to make a little bit of an injection after this video, because I completely forgot to give a huge shout out to Fred Scott for giving me this pack of cigarettes to make a review on. I really do appreciate it. Fred Scott, if you're watching this video, thank you so much for giving me this pack of cigarettes. Of course, I just completely realized I had it written down in my notes and everything like that, that I needed to make sure I give you a shout out, my man. But I don't know how I missed doing that at the beginning of this video, but nonetheless, I did. Well, I've already gotten the cellophane off, so I can't exactly restart now, but thank you so much for sending over this pack of cigarettes, Mr. Fred Scott. Thank you so much for giving me this pack of cigarettes, Mr. Fred Scott. I really do appreciate it. I certainly am looking forward to giving these a go, as I'm sure is obvious, and I'll have to make sure to leave a little bit of an injection at the beginning of this video, and everything like that kind of thing. I cannot believe that completely slipped my mind. That completely slipped my mind. Well, I'm glad I remembered, though. I'm glad I remembered. Let me just put it that way. But I do suppose now that I've covered that, and now that I've covered the packaging as a whole and the quality of the packaging and feel of the packaging and everything like that, I do suppose now I should probably go ahead and get this pack of cigarettes all opened up so I can actually take a look at what the inside of the pack actually looks like, what it feels like, and what the quality of it is like. Taking a look at the top of the cigarette lid right here, we can just see it just says, continue this paper pack's journey by recycling it. So they're trying to get you to recycle and everything like that, even though they don't use biodegradable cigarette filters. They do try to get you to recycle the cigarette filters, but they don't use biodegradable cigarette filters. We can see right here, we just get a very, oh, actually, I should cover this first. The cigarette insert itself is just a basic white cigarette insert, really nothing else, nothing interesting going on. And then we can see the foil itself is not actually foil, it's actually just paper, which is all white, a little bit more of a, I'd have to say, pure white than this paper right here, which is a little bit more of an off-white, I definitely have to say. And we can see on that paper, it just says at the top right there, please don't litter. And then it just has the Thunderbird logo right here. It's pretty much the same foil we see on all American Spirit packs, to nobody's surprise, in all honesty. Let's see how easily it pulls out. And pulls out a little bit easier than not. Well, not easier than not. It was a little bit of a hard pull out, but it pulled out cleanly, so I cannot complain. Let's go ahead and put that in my backpack. Got to make sure I'm not littered or nothing like that, of course. And now let's go ahead and get one of the American Spirit Organic Gold cigarettes all out of the pack, and let's go and take a look at what these cigarettes look like, what they feel like, and what the quality of them is like. And I think first off, I'm going to go ahead and smell this cigarette. And as a whole, whoa, right off the bat, a little bit more of an interesting smell than not. I'm getting, ooh, what even is that? It's definitely different than American Spirit varieties I've tried recently. I'm going to get another one out just because the smell is fading just a little bit. I'm able to smell a little bit of glue on the inside of the pack. Maybe that's kind of what the smell is. Who knows? Just get another one out anyway. So I'm getting sort of a very nice sort of, oh yeah, very interesting. I'm getting a sort of grassy, sweet tobacco smell off of this cigarette with a little bit of a tangy scent in there as well. A little bit of sourness. Interesting. Maybe these have more Virginia tobacco in them than normal because this smells a little bit more like a Virginia cigarette. I'm not sure. Interesting. Yeah. A very sort of mildly sweet, slightly sour, slightly tangy, very almost grassy or hay-like smell to these cigarettes. A very earthy smell as a whole, but not earthy like an earthy cigar, just earthy like grass or hay or something like that kind of thing. Very interesting. Very nice smell from these cigarettes right off the bat. I definitely have to say that's pretty much all there is to the smell. No, definitely a more interesting smell than not. I don't remember smelling an American Spirit variety that smells quite like this one. We can see look-wise, this cigarette looks very much like the vast majority of all other American Spirit varieties, I definitely have to say. Except, since this is a light cigarette, of course, it has a white filter. For some reason, it has a blue band on the filter. I'm not exactly sure what that's meant to signify. Maybe that's meant to signify the fact that this is an organic cigarette or something like that kind of thing. I'm not exactly sure. I cannot remember. It's been a very long time since I last had an American Spirit Yellow. If I remember correctly, the American Spirit Yellows actually have a cork-style filter. At least they did when I smoked them. Could be wrong. But I do wonder why this one has a white filter instead of a cork-style filter, but I'm not sure. But has a blue band on the cork-style filter for whatever reason, which doesn't really make much sense because this packaging, it doesn't line up at all. That's a little bit odd. I'm not sure. Maybe that's just to signify that it's USA grown, or maybe to signify that it's organic or something like that kind of thing. Not exactly sure, in all honesty. Under the filter, on the actual cigarette paper itself, we can see the American Spirit Thunderbird logo right there, and that's pretty much all that's going on look-wise to this cigarette. There is a pretty large line of perforation right here where my index finger is right there, and that line of perforation has a bunch of pretty big dots and a, well, when I say a bunch of pretty big dots, I mean a lot of them. There's a lot of pretty big dots, I ain't gonna lie, y'all. It's definitely a little bit more airy than not, but not like super airy by any means kind of thing. The draw, definitely a little bit more constricted than not, but the perforation definitely does help a little bit, and it definitely does make the draw a little bit less heavy, I definitely have to say, but a disappointing amount of airy, I definitely have to say as well, because I'm not really one for airy cigarettes, frankly put, but this one, I'm definitely think it's going to be a little bit more airy than not. On the pull through, I don't normally do pull-throughs, but I'm just feeling like doing one today in all honesty. But on the dry puff is the right way of putting it. On the dry puff, I'm very much getting a sort of mildly sweet, sort of grassy taste, I definitely have to say. Not bad at all. And quality-wise, this cigarette as a whole is pretty good. It's not falling apart or anything like that by any means. I definitely have to say we can see a little bit of the paper right here is kind of flipping up, but it's not actually falling apart. It's pretty hard to make a below-average quality cigarette, and it's pretty hard to make an above-average quality cigarette, and this is just pretty average quality as a whole. Not bad by any means. Not bad by any means, if you ask me. But I think that's pretty much all I wanted to say for the actual look, feel, quality, smell, dry puff, everything like that kind of thing. So I do think, without further ado, I think it's time for me to go ahead and take a little bit of a sip of water before I go ahead and get the cigarette all lit up. Whoopsies. And then now that I've taken a little bit of a sip of water, let's go ahead and get my lighter out of my pocket. let's go ahead and get this cigarette all lit up, grab a little bit of a screenshot, and talk about how this cigarette actually is. Without further ado, y'all, let's go ahead and get this, the American Spirit Gold cigarette, all lit up, and let's go ahead and find out how good or how bad these cigarettes right here actually are. Yes, sir, you know what I'm saying. Right off the bat, much more airy than not, I can definitely say. Far more airy than not. A little bit more airy. A little bit too airy for my personal preference. Let's go ahead and grab myself a little bit of a screenshot real quick, I do think. Hopefully that screenshot will do, you know what I'm saying? Hopefully that screenshot will do. Got a bunch of smoke on my nose. My nose is now not liking me very much. But, right off the bat, the taste of the cigarette is much better than not. I really like the taste of the cigarette. It's just far too airy. It's really, really, really airy. I'm going to need a moment to kind of determine what the actual taste of the cigarette is. I did smoke a cigarette right before this video, and so I'm kind of feeling like the taste that's already in my mouth is kind of combining with the taste of the cigarette just a little bit. So I'm just going to smoke a little bit more of this cigarette real quick, kind of really try to make sure what I'm tasting is actually from this cigarette. And in the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and test the body, airflow, draw, everything like that. So let's go and test the body real quick. Body is tiny. Body is absolutely tiny, and it is very airy as well. This is a very airy cigarette as a whole. I'd have to say, airflow wise, the airflow is very constricted. Draw wise, the draw is, even with all the perforation, still much more heavy than not. And it's not even just heavy, it's airy as well. I'm not really one for heavy, airy cigarettes. I don't mind a heavy draw by any means, but when the heavy draw is airy as well, that's when the issues come to be. And yeah, I don't really like the draw off of this cigarette. I don't mind the airflow. I don't like the draw. I don't like the body. Don't get a lot of smoke on the body. Not a big fan of that. I am expecting to get more smoke as I get towards the bottom of the cigarette, though, of course. But not a big fan of the body, not a big fan of the draw. It's too light for me right off the bat, I definitely have to say. Roughness and smoothness wise, this cigarette is very much a 6 to 7 out of 10. It definitely does have a throat hit, that is for sure. A surprising amount of throat hit just due to the perforation, I definitely have to say. And then I'd have to say strength wise, it's kind of hard to say at the moment, but I'd have to say probably the 6 out of 10 is pretty correct. I'd have to say the 6 out of 10 is pretty correct. So, what does the cigarette actually taste like, though? Well, it's a little bit more interesting than not. I was hoping for an interesting cigarette, and I got an interesting cigarette, frankly put. It is much more airy than not. So you get a very airy taste as a whole, which is not very much to my preference. But the actual taste of the tobacco you get is not bad by any means. And the taste of the tobacco I'm getting when you inhale and exhale normally, you do, more so than not, get a taste of, I definitely have to say, a sort of slightly nutty, sweet, grassy, slightly grassy. Yeah, it's sort of a sort of like very mildly sweet, nutty, grassy taste. Almost hay-like, I definitely have to say. With a little bit of roughness in there as well. That's mainly from the roughness. There's not actually a rough taste by any means. but the roughness does have an effect on the taste as well, I do want to acknowledge. That's very much what the taste is like when you're inhaling and exhaling normally. It's definitely much more sweet than not. The roughness of the cigarette definitely has an effect on the taste, though, as said, and it makes the cigarette taste a little bit more sour as a whole, but the actual taste of the tobacco itself does not come off as sour nor tangy. Like, well, okay, it doesn't come off as sour, but there is maybe the tiniest bit of tang in there. Yeah, there's the tiniest bit of tang in there, but not a significant amount, not a significant amount. And the taste as a whole, when you're inhaling and exhaling normally, it's very much a very mostly airy, mildly sweet, slightly nutty tobacco taste with a little bit of a sort of like grassy, hay-like taste that is not sweet. It's the nutty taste that is sweet. The grassy, hay-like taste is not the sweet part. It's very much more of a mild taste, not really sweet, not really sour per se kind of thing. That taste more so than not has a little bit of a tangy taste, but it's very, very, very minimal. And then the roughness of the cigarette also gives the taste of the cigarette as a whole a little bit of a sour taste as well, but it's not actually the taste of the tobacco. It's just the cigarette hitting the back of your throat and making it taste a little bit more sour, and just the feeling making it taste a little bit more sour. But when retrohaling, the taste gets a little bit different. And so retrohaling, what I do for retrohaling is I put my tongue to the top of my mouth and then I exhale through my nose. And when retrohaling, the airy taste is still much more distinct than not. However, the tobacco taste does become a little bit more prevalent as well. And I'd have to say the taste when retrohaling very much just exemplifies the taste of the tobacco. The sweetness from the nutty taste is more sweet. The nutty taste as a whole is more distinguishable, and you can now realize that the nutty taste has sort of a very nice, sort of slightly buttery taste to it kind of thing as well. And then the sort of grassy, hay-like taste is a little bit more distinct as well. And you can definitely notice at that point that it's just a very mild additional undertone with a little bit, a very slight tangy taste to it. And even when you're retrohaling, the sourness from the roughness very much still comes through, I definitely have to say. And that's very much what the taste of this cigarette is like as a whole. Not a bad taste by any means. The taste of the tobacco itself is really nice. I really like the taste of the tobacco itself. It's just that the cigarette itself is so airy, and the airiness in the taste of the cigarette really does ruin it for me, along with the really airy body and the really airy draw. The airiness, this cigarette's just too light for my personal preference. But if you want an airy, light cigarette with a nice taste, I do think that this could be a good cigarette for you right off the bat. Let's go ahead and test the body once again. Body, a little bit bigger than the first time, still very airy though, still much more smaller than not. To nobody's surprise, the airflow is still quite constricted, even though we are reaching the end of the cigarette. And the draw has gotten a little bit lighter, I definitely have to say, just because we're reaching the end of the cigarette, but it's still a little bit heavier and more airy than not, I definitely have to say as well. Yeah. As a whole, it's too light for my personal preference, I can definitely say. Roughness and smoothness-wise, this is very much a 6 to 7 out of 10, depending on which heat you take. Could be a 7 out of 10, could be a 6 out of 10. Strength-wise, I definitely have to say this cigarette is much more like a... I've been smoking American Spirits a pretty decent amount lately, frankly put. Heavier American Spirits at that. I've been smoking American Spirit full-bodied reds a decent amount recently, and I'd have to say this is very much like a 5 out of 10 when compared to those, but when compared to like your average full-flavored cigarette like a Marlboro Red or something like that kind of thing, it's more like a 6 out of 10, I definitely have to say. When compared to something like, let's say, a Marlboro Light, this is very much more of a medium cigarette. It is still getting me a little bit of a buzz. I'm not feeling nothing from it like I have had happen previously from, excuse me, from some light and ultralight cigarettes. And the taste of the cigarette is very much the same even as you reach the end. Maybe gets a little bit more intense just because you're able to get more smoke and less air, but not much. I think that was pretty much all I had to the cigarette. I'm going to go ahead and step it on the ground. The cigarette filter as a whole did not get super mushy, but it did get a little bit spongy, I definitely have to say. And we can see the filter actually starts right where the blue line is, I definitely have to say this. So that's where the filter actually starts, although I think stubbing it out where I stubbed it out is a pretty good place to, well, stub it out. So what are my final thoughts on the American Spirit Organic Gold cigarettes? Well, as a whole, packaging-wise, for this specific pack with this specific packaging, I'm not a fan of the packaging. It's very mid in my personal opinion. I don't like it. The quality of the packaging is pretty average. The texture of the packaging is very much just printed paperboard, pretty basic stuff. Nothing unusual for an American Spirit cigarette. The inside of the pack looks pretty basic. The cigarette itself very much looks like a normal American Spirit. Really nothing too interesting going on, frankly put. And the cigarette itself as well is not the most interesting cigarette in the world by any means. The taste stays the same all the way through. It's not particularly dynamic. The taste as a whole, it's not the greatest taste in the world, but it is slightly more interesting than not, I will admit. The taste I got was very much that of a mostly airy, slightly sweet, nutty, grassy, hay-like tobacco taste with a little bit of tang in there and a little bit of sourness coming from the roughness in my throat. I'd have to say, body-wise, very small, very airy. Airflow-wise, very constricted. Draw-wise, very heavy and airy. And I'd have to say, roughness, smoothness-wise, very much a 6 out of 10. And strength-wise, very much a 6 out of 10 as well as a whole. As a whole, I'll be frank, I'm not really the super big. I'm not really the super big. I'm not really the biggest fan of these cigarettes. They're too light for my personal preference. But if you are looking for a light cigarette with a little bit more of an interesting taste than not, and maybe you're looking for a light cigarette that's a little bit different than, like, say, like the American Spirit Yellows or something like that kind of thing, I do think that these cigarettes might be to your preference. They're not bad cigarettes per se. I definitely wouldn't say these are bad cigarettes. They're just not to my personal preference. But if you like light cigarettes and you don't mind an airy cigarette, I don't think you'll mind these one bit. Not a bad cigarette by any means. Not the best light American Spirit I've ever tried. The American Spirit Tans are still my favorite light American Spirit, I will admit. For context, those are a non-organic but USA-grown light American Spirit. And I feel like those ones are a little bit heavier than these as well, which is probably another reason why they're more to my preference. But, yeah, as a whole, meh. It's okay. It's okay. It's not something I'd buy again, or buy again. I didn't buy this pack. But it's not something I would ever buy with my own money, frankly put. It's not something I'd buy with my own money. Even if I wanted a light cigarette, there's other light cigarettes I'd much rather have other than these, frankly put. They're just too airy for my personal preference. Comparable cigarettes to these, of course, the American Spirit Yellows, somewhat comparable. The American Spirit Tans, somewhat comparable as well. Other than that, the Nats Yellows are pretty airy, I'd have to say. Pretty comparable to these in airiness. The Nats Yellow is somewhat comparable as well, I'd have to say. Other than that, I really haven't had too many other cigarettes that are super comparable taste-wise to these cigarettes. Not really comparable to Marlboro Golds, not really comparable to Camel Blues, in all honesty. It's a little bit different. It's very much an additive-free light cigarette. That's very much what it is, frankly put. The only American Spirit, the only non-American Spirit variety of light cigarettes that really comes to mind for being comparable to this one right here is the Nats Yellow, frankly put, which are not a cigarette I really enjoy much, just like this cigarette. I think it's going to take quite a while for me to smoke my way through the rest of this pack, in all honesty. It's going to take quite a while, that is for sure. Yeah, just too light, too airy for my personal preference. These are not even that light of cigarettes. They're just too airy for my personal preference, frankly put. But they just weren't so airy. There would be so much more to my personal preference. But the taste as a whole, not bad. As a whole, I'm thinking rating-wise, I'm thinking probably, I would never buy these again. I have to go with a 1 out of 4. 1 out of 4, I definitely have to say. No, you know what? No, I'm not doing a 1 out of 4. I'm switching up. I've been switching up my, starting with the last review I did, I decided to start switching up the rating scale I give cigarettes and whatnot kind of thing. I've decided to start doing cigarettes on a 1 to 4 rating, a 1 to 4 star rating, rather than a 1 to 10 star rating, which I feel like just makes it a little bit easier. 1 star is like, this is terrible, never buy this, I will never recommend this to anybody. Number 2 is 2 stars is like, this is okay, might be to your preference, not to mine. 3 is like, this is pretty good kind of thing. And 4 is like, oh my God, this is amazing. I'd have to say, this is not a cigarette that I'd give 1 star, actually, just because it is a cigarette that, if you are looking for a light cigarette, I do think could be recommended kind of thing. But it's not a cigarette that I would personally smoke again. And it's not particularly bad by any means, but I definitely do think a 2 out of 4 stars is pretty deserving for this. I do think a 2 out of 4 stars is pretty deserving for this. And yeah. 2 out of 4 stars, as said. Also, I do want to acknowledge with my new rating system, I'm not taking into account the packaging or anything like that kind of thing. It's just smoking experience. 2 out of 4 stars, very much deserving for this cigarette as a whole, in my personal opinion. And yeah, 2 out of 4 stars for the American Spirit Golds, in my personal opinion. Yeah. Well, certainly hope you guys have enjoyed watching this video. If you guys have enjoyed watching this video where I gave a review to the American Spirit USA grown organic gold cigarettes, of course, please make sure to like and subscribe for more content, and also make sure to let me know y'all's thoughts on these cigarettes if you guys have tried them before in the comments down below. I also have my Instagram, my book, my merch, my P.O. box, and my second channel all in the description down below. Go check it all out. But, thank you so much for watching, y'all. Till the next one, stay safe in peace and have a great one. Yes sir, you know what I'm saying.